Amid the ongoing deadlock with Washington, is Iran now turning its focus toward Trump's Arab allies with a sharper tone? By criticizing the Gulf Cooperation Council, is Tehran accusing regional states of quietly backing the U.S. Israel war effort? As calls emerge for compensation, is Iran demanding that Arab governments bear part of the cost of the conflict? And as Gulf states push for the reopening of a critical oil route, is Tehran setting new conditions before making any move? Iran has sharply criticized several Arab states over their stance during the ongoing conflict involving the United States and Israel. The Iranian Foreign Ministry accused the Gulf Cooperation Council of issuing statements that it described as hostile toward Tehran. Spokesman Esmail Baghai rejected the GCC's position on Iran's retaliatory actions, dismissing it as unfounded and biased. Baghai maintained that Iran remains committed to preserving stable and constructive relations with neighboring Arab countries. However, Tehran also alleged that certain Gulf states were involved in actions supporting U.S. and Israeli military operations. These accusations were directed at countries that reportedly allowed their territory to be used for strikes targeting Iran. Iran further claimed that some regional allies of Washington had effectively become complicit in the ongoing conflict. The Iran Foreign Ministry said, and I quote, "Despite earlier assurances of commitment to legal and international obligations, and declarations that they wouldn't allow their territory and facilities to be used in anti-Iran strikes, these governments did not take any measures to stop the process and even actively participated in the anti-Iran aggression under the United Nations General Assembly Resolution 3314. These governments have effectively become complicit in heinous U.S.-Israeli atrocities against the Iranian nation." End quote. The Iranian Foreign Ministry also criticized GCC Secretary-General Jassim Mohammed al-Budaiwi over his recent remarks. The GCC chief had reportedly called on Iran to lift its blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. Baghai responded by describing the blockade as a defensive measure taken in response to perceived threats from the United States and Israel. He further stated that Iran's actions are consistent with its interpretation of international law. Tehran also urged GCC member states to take steps aimed at rebuilding trust and reducing tensions in the region. In addition, Iran reiterated its position that affected countries should address the damage caused during the conflict. Iran is reportedly demanding compensation from 5 Middle Eastern countries for damage suffered during the war, broadening its post-conflict claims beyond the United States and Israel. Iran's ambassador to the United Nations made the demand, according to Iran International citing IRNA, and the countries named were Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, and Jordan. Iran's compensation push came after the U.S. moved to blockade the Strait of Hormuz and after peace talks failed, adding another layer of pressure to an already volatile regional standoff. Amir Said Iravani said, and I quote, "Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates and Jordan had breached their international obligations toward Iran and should compensate the country for losses caused during the conflict." Unquote. Iran's demand is emerging even after Arab states themselves suffered heavy losses during the war, creating a sharply contested narrative over responsibility for the damage. Oil and gas infrastructure in several Arab states suffered major damage during the conflict, including critical facilities in the Gulf that were hit or disrupted. The IMF has said recovery timelines in the Gulf will vary by country depending on geography and how quickly exports can resume, indicating that some energy systems may face a prolonged return to normal operations. Ras Laffan, the complex responsible for about 93% of Qatar's LNG output, has been shut since early March according to reports about the disruption at the site. An estimated 3 to 5 years are reportedly needed to restore Ras Laffan to full capacity, according to reports citing damage assessments after the strikes on Qatar's key LNG complex. In Bahrain, several homes were damaged in situ. Industrial sites, including aluminium-related facilities, were also reportedly targeted. At least 2 civilians were killed and 2 others were injured. Saudi Arabia faced repeated attacks on Riyadh and the eastern province. Reports said 2 civilians were killed. 1 U.S. service member also died. At least 12 American soldiers were wounded during the attacks. Qatar came under repeated attacks on key sites and important oil and gas infrastructure. 4 Qatari servicemen and 3 Turkish nationals were reported killed. Some of the casualties linked to a helicopter crash during the conflict period. In the United Arab Emirates, fires and visible damage were reported in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. Civilian infrastructure, airports, ports, and industrial locations were affected. Petrochemical and aluminium-linked facilities were also reportedly attacked. Deaths included 9 civilians and 2 military personnel. In Jordan, falling debris caused material damage. 1 American soldier was reported injured. A strike was also reported on a U.S.-related site in eastern Jordan.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that we will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest newsmakers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the U.S. will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry guards.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HD videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.